Breaking bike parts is really expensive and it's really annoying. So if you're someone that always smashes your bike to bits, then watch this video. Hopefully I'll be able to help you out. Rear mechs are obviously in a really vulnerable spot, low to the ground, and they're sticking out, so they can break off, and I know people snap these or their hangers on their frames fairly regularly, which is super annoying because the rear mech, if that breaks in the ride is over. Also, they're right next to your back wheel, and I've seen it happen quite a few times where the mech gets hit by an obstacle, goes into the wheel, and also takes out spokes, so it can cause some expensive damage. Not helped by your back wheel getting closer to the inside of corners, particularly in slow sections where your turning circle is really tight. People have tried to build gearbox bikes, and actually they do exist, but they just haven't taken off, so most bikes still have a rear mech. They are in a vulnerable spot, like I said, so we've got to learn to live with them and actually to learn to ride and consider your rear mech. Getting a feel of just where your mech is in relation to trail obstacles is a mountain bike essential skill that takes some getting used to. Plan your lines to avoid things on the right hand side, or pick your rear wheel up to get around obstacles. Punctures are something that are always going to happen with riding mountain bikes, but there's definitely ways of minimising them. Tubeless pretty much takes away 100% of those thorn style punctures where something small is poking through your tyre and into your tube. Check out our recent tubes versus tubeless video where we show the reason why you want to go tubeless for getting rid of those punctures. But sometimes you will still sort of smack your tyres hard enough. They will get damaged, holes will go into the tyre, or you can even rip them if they're tubeless. Riding skills will definitely help out reducing those punctures. I think to a certain level, if you get better, you will have less punctures. But even the best riders, obviously, you still see the racers ripping tyres because they can't ride smooth all the time. But if you're ripping tyres all the time, I would look at your tyre construction. The simplest way of looking at how sort of tough a tyre is looking at its weight. That's what I do, is look through the spec sheets. And if a tyre is over about 1 kilogram, you know that it should have some good protection. You know, cross-country tyres are down at like 550, 600 grams, I think, off the top of my head. So they're super lightweight. Obviously, they don't have the protection. So a trail tyre, you're getting up towards 1 kilogram. Anything up to about 1200, that's probably as heavy as I'd want to go. Then you start getting into the dual ply tyres. So basically, 2 layers of rubber gives you way more protection. If you're a heavier rider, or someone like Blake, I think he's not a heavy rider, he's just quite aggressive on the bike. I think someone like Blake should be running sort of the Enduro or downhill ply tyres most of the time. Something else to consider if you are a tyre ripper is inserts. They can really help with protection, and it doesn't always mean that you need to go up to the next sort of tyre construction. You might be able to stay with your trail tyres and put inserts in and reduce your punctures. The cause of most snap chains, I think, is people trying to shift when they're putting too much power into the pedals. So you do need to ease off ever so slightly for a split second to get a good clean shift, but also make your chain last longer. The other reason you might be shifting under too much power is because your rear mech isn't moving exactly when you expect it to. And that's normally because your gear cable's got a bit of friction in there. So just freshen that one up, stick a new inner cable in, that probably does it 9 times out of 10. And it'll just shift that much quicker and cleaner. And then you can predict exactly when your rear mech's going to move and when that chain's going to be crossing over the sprockets. Learning to ride smoother is going to be smoother and easier on your bike and help save it as well. Now, I don't know about you, but I've got a friend, I've probably got a few friends actually, that are really good riders, really fast racers as well, but they're just really heavy on bikes because they're a bit clumsy and they don't ride that smooth. So getting those extra little skills like pumping, unweighting, bunny hopping, really take your riding to the next level. I think it makes you crash less as well, but it's much easier on things like your tyres and your wheels and your bike as a whole. Pumping is a really basic skill that you can take to a really advanced level. And it's all about making speed from the trail that's in front of you. And that really helps you become smooth because you have to pedal less and swing your weight around less on the bike. Much safer and much faster. Unweighting and hopping are basically the same thing. You need to learn a really good bunny hop, and then you can use that on large scale to open up lines on the track that are basically unrideable, or in small scale where you're just taking your weight off the tyres on the trail. That can really smooth out a trail, of course, and then mean that you're puncturing less and rattling your bike around less. You can pick smoother lines on a trail to help not break your bike as well. I've already talked about that earlier, where you try and ride around obstacles so that your rear mech doesn't get close. But also you can ride away from some of the roughest and gnarliest parts of the trail, and that's also going to help save your bike. If it's not one thing that you suffer from all the time, like punctures or snap chain, it's just general things going wrong, then it might be up to you to learn a few mechanical skills and learn to check your bike over a bit more regularly. Something I do a lot is bolt checks, because there's some bolts that do regularly come loose. All bikes are different and some will suffer in different areas more than others. I'd say if you've got a new bike, definitely after a ride and then a second ride, check all the bolts. They almost certainly will have come loose in some places. If you have a bike, for example, that the linkage bolts maybe come loose a lot, then it's time to think about getting some thread lock in there just to make sure they don't. But things that I find do fairly regularly come loose are rear axles. Definitely check those. If you're riding in really rough places, they can come loose, and that'll cause loads of damage. If it comes loose enough to fall out, I've seen that happen, and it will smash your mech, can damage your frame, damage your wheel, can cause very expensive problems. Another one I check all the time are my disc brake bolts. So those rotor bolts do come loose occasionally. So two types of check that I do regularly, and they only take a minute max if nothing's wrong, shall I say. But first one is the M check. So going in an M shape on your bike, starting down the front axle, check everything's tight there, give your front wheel a wobble, up to the bars, check those bolts, try and move your bars around, make sure they're tight. Down to the cranks, pedals. Pedals do occasionally come loose, so check on those. Up to the saddle, check those bolts, and then down in that M shape to the rear wheel, where I'll check again the brakes, the rotors, the spokes, and my rear axle. Other check I do regularly is just a general bolt check. I've said it already, but just make sure all the bolts are nice and tight. Don't over torque them, and make sure they're nipped up. Hopefully I've covered everything that gets broken most of the time. If I haven't, if there's something that you break all the time and you're not sure why, then leave us a comment down below. I'll check it out, give you a reply, or even make a video about it. Give us a thumbs up if you found this video useful, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want more useful, sometimes entertaining videos from GMBN.